What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Cedar Flags. It's been a little while, and I apologize for that, but we are back in what is shaping up to be a fairly long episode. What are we doing? Well, we are actually just building the building around the station of our ride that we built in the last episode. And from the comments in the last episode, it seems like you guys are loving the name Alpine River Rush. So I am all for that. I still have to make a logo up for that and put the signs in on this new building, but we'll get to that in the next episode. I originally wanted to go through in this episode and do pretty much all of the scenery work around this ride, but as things started to take shape, it looked more and more like we weren't going to do that. So yeah, I have about 10 hours worth of footage in this time lapse. It was a very evolving process, and it was just trying to mix the, you'll see me go over to the modern building that we placed a little while ago. And I was trying to mix the elements of that design in with the elements of the design that we have over by like the Alpine Spirit ride. So this building was, when I first set out for this, to build this building, it was really vague in my mind. I had somewhat of an idea, and actually somebody on Twitter, and I think a couple people sent me pictures on Twitter and were like, hey, this is what this station building should kind of look like. And I was like, this is a great starting point. So thank you to whoever that was. I never remember you guys' names, and I apologize for that too. But yes, this building has a lot of influence from like those mining buildings you'd see just by like abandoned mines or even live mines. They're buildings that are pretty much just like thrown up just because they have to be. There's not a lot of like design into these buildings, and there's not like a lot of intricate like parts in these, but they're there because they're providing a purpose for the mining operation. So that's the feel that I was going for in this build, and you'll see that a lot. I didn't want to overdo it, but at the same time, I wanted to add like little elements here and there just to have a little bit more of like a design influence to them. And yeah, I think at the end this comes out as a really nice building, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think in the comments, of course. And then in the next episode, we'll go through and finish up the scenery work around this ride, and then we'll eventually go in and do the point of view, the on-ride experience like we have been doing for the rest of the custom rides that we have placed. And honestly, I might go back and do some of the like non-custom, like the flat rides, and do like a POV of that. So if you want to see like POVs of all of the rides in the park, let me know and I'll start working on that. I mean, those aren't really that hard to make. So yes, anyway, this building is kind of it was, I don't know, when it first started it was kind of tricky, mostly because of the path work. You'll see we have the exit of this ride out the back, and then the main like exit path that we placed when we started building this ride is up on like a cliff side, and we had to somehow connect all that up, and it was kind of a tricky little challenge. And I really wanted to get like these stairs so it wasn't like one massive flight of stairs. I wanted to break it up a little bit, and I think you'll see this in real theme parks around the world, just because, well, not even theme parks, just anywhere in like a public space. You want people to not have to walk up like 25 stairs. It's way better to have them walk up like a set of 10 stairs, and then like a set of 10 stairs, and then like a set of 5 stairs, and like break it up a little bit, unless you were really, really pressured to get all of those stairs in that spot because of like a space restriction or something. So that's really what I wanted to do, but unfortunately the pathing in this game didn't really lend itself to that, and it was very tricky to get all the path work done for this building. But eventually I really enjoy how this all comes out. Now, you just saw me put that path over the other side of the ride, and this really adds another like level of just another, I guess, space for people to walk. And I really love how this all ties in eventually. Now, originally I wanted to force all of the exiting riders or guests out over this little bridge that we've placed here, but we've now been able to split that up, and some of them will be able to go back over the top of the ride and then come out to the more of the entrance area eventually. And I think this is going to be really good, and we actually end up putting a hat stall in the top of this exit area in this building, and we're gonna do what I actually used to do a lot in Roller Coaster Tycoon, and that was build a stall but only sell like one certain kind of hat and only sell that certain kind of hat in this area. So eventually what you can do with that is basically track, like, just as a broad overview looking at guests. Like in this one, for example, it's going to be cowboy hats for some reason, I don't know. But yeah, eventually we'll be able to look out over the crowd and see, oh, all of these guys have cowboy hats, so we know they've been to this specific part of the park. I don't know if that really does much of anything for us. I mean, it's not like we're going to use that information to, like, do some sort of marketing or anything to that, but it's just kind of a cool little thing to do, because then you can really gain some insight into where people have been in the park. Now, eventually we could go through with another, like, hat stall somewhere else and then put, like, a separate kind of hat down at the end of the park, and it's kind of cool to, like, spread those out into, like, the four corners of the park, and then, yeah, you can see where people have been. It's kind of a neat little trick that I've been doing for many years, back to the Roller Coaster Tycoon days. But anyway, what we're doing right now is going through and setting up the queue. And again, I think, like, throughout the park, we've not, I don't know. I don't really have a good sense of how long a queue for a specific ride should be. And that's pretty evident in, like, Gravity Mod, where it's mostly full all the time, and it looks like people are just, like, walking away because there's no actual space left, like, physically in the queue. So hopefully this queue is going to be long enough, and what we've placed so far is not the finished queue length. We're actually going to go out back of this building and add some more to the queue. So I'm thinking we're going to have enough. I'm hoping we're going to have enough, but I'm not sure until we actually get the ride going. And this ride's kind of weird because I think it can fit like 12 people per raft. I was gonna say car, but it's not really a car. But anyway, it's like a large capacity ride, so I'm wondering how, like, the station is gonna cope with that. I mean, it's gonna have to load a lot of people per raft, and I'm hoping that it can kind of keep up, because we do have quite a bit of rafts on this ride. So we'll see how that goes in the next few episodes, I think. I'm not really sure when we're gonna get to opening this ride for, like, actual... It'll probably be at the end of the next episode. We'll actually go in and turn the ride on and start to see some guests on there. But yes, hopefully our queue can cope, but I'm not sure. And I did want to say that originally I was planning on putting a priority queue in, but I couldn't really, just because of the physical or space restrictions, couldn't get the priority queue to link up right, and it really wasn't cooperating. So I figured, screw that, let's just go ahead and do a normal queue. And it's not like this, I don't know, I don't feel like these rides in an amusement park like we have here are like the top ride getters. I don't know what the wording I'm looking for, but I feel like most people, when they come to a theme park, or an amusement park rather, aren't coming for, like, the water rides, especially if there aren't a lot of water rides. And I think at this point we don't have a lot of water rides because we don't have, like, the water park DLC pack that we should eventually get. Now, I'm just speculating on that, but I'm going to assume that we'll eventually get some water slides and that kind of stuff, and that could be cool to put into this park eventually. So we'll see if the time frames work for that. But anyway, until then, we're just going to put the water-themed rides that we have in the game, and that is an additional, I think, like, log flume type ride. And then eventually in the next update, which is coming out soon, at the end of the month, I believe. But yeah, we're going to be getting a water roller coaster. So that'll be interesting, and we'll see what we can do with that in this part of the park as well. Now, we have a lot of space between this path work that we're putting in now and, like, the main path that we've had in the park for a long time. And hopefully we'll do something interesting with that area. Now, it's kind of cool because it's set down in, like, elevation a little bit, so there's a little bit of room to, like, do some scenery work there and add some planters and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm hoping there's enough room to actually go through and put, like, a part of one of those two other rides that we're putting in this area. We'll see about that. I'm not really sure. We could even possibly do, like, a train through here, which is one thing that I was thinking about doing. And the train I'm talking about, like the transportation train, where guests will get on it and then go to the like back of the park with it. That could be really cool, but I don't know if it's gonna have like the space to do that. So we'll kind of see what happens after we finish up this ride, and then we move on to like expanding into what we're gonna do with that area next. But what you've been watching me do was basically just kind of start to, I really want to say, sketch out what the building was gonna be. Now, this building, when I was building it, was kind of tough. It was a pretty challenging build just because of the way all of the pathing is, and I wanted to get the building to do some certain things, and it just wasn't having it. And then eventually it's really interesting for me, at least, because I've lived this, I built all of this, so it's really interesting to see where this building has evolved from. And I could tell you that a lot of what I did in the past minute or so in the time lapse actually gets deleted and reworked, and it ends up in like a really nice place in my mind. But just getting to that point was kind of a stretch, and for a long time I was just trying to put pieces together, hoping that they'd fit together, and then eventually they wouldn't fit, and so it would just like, I'd have to scrap all of it and go back to what I was just doing to try to get something to work. But we're adding to the queue right now. You can see there's a little bit more queue in the back here. Again, I'm not really sure if it's going to be able to cope with all of the riders that we're going to get, but honestly, I think it's one of the better sized queues that we have in the park so far. Now, the exit that we're working on right now, I was trying to get connected up to the main path. It really wasn't working. So what we end up doing is putting in like a little planter area. This is going to be kind of cool when it's all said and done. All of the like, it's just going to be a nice little area for greenery, because I think what I'm planning on doing with the rest of this little area down here, and when I say down here, I mean between the two like path systems, is basically just put rides, or like the end of a ride or something. Like I said, I'm not really sure what we're gonna do with that, but there's really not a lot of space for like greenery and like planting. So adding a little bit of that like artificial like flower bed type stuff really goes a long way throughout this. Now, I like how this building has like a couple little sections. If you look at it, you take a step back and you can see we have those like vertical plank walls going on, and then on a couple of the other sections of the building we have the horizontal like plank walls. And really, it looks like these two buildings, or this one building, is really made out of like 2 or 3 separate buildings all just kind of smashed together. And like I said in the early part of this time lapse, that was kind of what we were going for here, and we're trying to get a couple of these things just simply constructed and then put together. It's more of a function over form in this building. So I love how this comes out, and this whole roofing section was so challenging to get done. I wanted to do like one thing, and that's what you're seeing me do right now, and then eventually we scrap it, and then it's just a really evolving process, like I said. But eventually the main part of the building, which is directly over the station, gets this kind of like barn-shaped roof, and then the rest of it's kind of all thrown in just as it is. Now, I wanted to do like this little tiered roof type thing. It really wasn't working in the end, so eventually we go to that barn-shaped roof, and from there, things just kind of fit together. And I love when things just kind of fit together. It's so nice when you get a design and you get like a rough estimate in your head, and you go for it, and eventually it's just like, oh yes, this piece fits here, this is perfect. And eventually we get to that point in this build, but eventually, I mean, it took a little while to get there. Now, there was a lot of like minute work, I'd say, in like going into the building and trying to get like little gaps filled out, and I think I cut a lot of that out because in like a time-lapse setting, watching that is very, very annoying. Like, there's a lot of just small moving the camera from one spot to the next, and it's not very entertaining to watch, and it's kind of dizzying. And there's a lot of things in like these time lapses that can be very dizzying, just in the way I like move the camera around and try to get looks at things. So I hope that doesn't cause anybody like too much stress on their eyes when they're watching these episodes, but it's just it's one of those things that I try to not have to put into these time lapses, just because they're not adding a lot to them, but they are important to do, to go in and like fill all those gaps and that kind of stuff. Now the building is starting to take its final form here, and it took a while to get to this point. Like I said, I mean, there were little things here and there, and there were like design elements that just weren't working together. And so eventually we get to this, and I love this part of the build. This is like a little angled chute or like walkway or whatever you want to call it. And it goes from like a higher part of the building to this lower little box part. And this comes out so nice, especially with these little pieces that we're putting in right now. Originally, I wanted this to look like this. And then I went to the back and I was like, oh, this looks a lot better. So then we get these little like horizontal or vertical rather like supports, and this little bridge looks so good. And this is one of those main influences that I took from the picture that whoever sent me over on Twitter. And honestly, I love how this comes out. It's very, very unique. And just using the roof as the floor and the roof of this little part gives it so much character. And it's something that you really don't see a lot in this game. And it's just because of that angle. Like, you'll never see walls on that angle in this game because all the walls are on that square grid. So rotating them to those funky angles just isn't possible. So using that little scenery piece right there, it just made it so nice. It's such a cool little element to this. And I guess I should talk about what this whole building like has in the sense of like a purpose. Beside being like the Q building, I wanted to give it a little bit of something like theming wise. So eventually what that becomes is water. Now, you saw us put the water on the top, like the water tower up on the top. Eventually we're going to go through and actually go in and make it look like water is flowing and pumping throughout this entire space. Now, it's kind of cool, and we'll get to that, but before we do, we're just adjusting the height of that roof and then adjusting some of the scenery out back here. And we cut the grid in half when I was designing this. Now, you can do that. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but you can cut the grid from the normal size, which if you're working in footage or feet or whatever, it's 13 feet wide, I think, and then you can cut it down to 7 feet. And that adds like a whole new layer of building and designing into this game. And it's really nice because you can get those like half walls set up, and just it adds a lot of possibilities, and it helps when you're trying to work around a path like we are. But what we're doing right now is going through and starting that whole water concept that I was just talking about. And the water from the top water tower comes down through the wall, through this, I'm using air quotes, pipe, because it's just art pieces, but it comes down through this pipe, and then it gets dropped down onto a water mill, not a windmill, a water wheel. That's the word. There we go. Yes, it gets down into this water wheel, and it just looks like we're adding some sort of power or something to this building using water. And it's cool because obviously the ride is a water-based ride. And then eventually we have to go through and make like a little catch basin for this. And this is one thing that I don't think I've been doing a lot of throughout this whole park so far, and that is theming inside the actual station itself. Now, the stations look fine, especially in roller coasters because you have the queues that go all the way through, but this station is really weird because there's only one queue entrance onto the rafts. So the rest of it was just this like boxed in like or fenced in little empty space. So obviously we had to do something here, and we go ahead and put these little water spouts down here, and with art blocks we go ahead and put this, what we're calling water, down in here. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of having to do this. I really wish there was like a square fountain or something, or like a little water block that we could do, and it'd be really nice to have that in the game. But for now, this is what we got, so this is what we're gonna have to use. But yes, this was a little bit of a tricky little area to build because the actual railings in this area weren't to size. They weren't like a full wall width of railing. So there's a little bit of weirdness in having to like cram these in there, and that's why you're seeing the double wall, like the double layer of wall here. And I don't know, I like how this comes out, but it was just very tedious to try to get to look good. And I don't know, in the end, it's pretty nice. I like how this is, and moving forward in this series, we're gonna be doing a lot more of the like theming around like the actual station and within the actual station, because there's a lot we can do with that. For like a roller coaster, we could totally put in the little like cubbies that theme parks have to put like people's backpacks in while they ride the ride. And then we could, of course, theme around the entire like operation panel of the ride too. And a lot of times you'll see like in a roller coaster setting, those operators will be enclosed in their own little space. But yes, we'll do that moving forward. But what we're doing right now is going through and setting up a custom railing system for this little area inside of this building. And I do want to mention that I left some of this like queue area as an open building. It's not totally enclosed, but I did like having the guests from the outside be able to like look in and see all the people waiting and see all of this like cool intricate decoration that we've been doing around here. Like you have the water wheel in there, and I wanted some sort of like visual into that. And then this whole queue, the whole purpose of putting these custom railings up was to make it look good from the outside and the inside, obviously. But yes, it looks good. It was another very, very tedious process, especially because those ropes that we're using are very hard to select for some reason. You can't click on the side of it. You have to click like directly on the top of it. And then I think a lot of it had to do with the other scenery items around. Like there are blocks above and below it, so clicking on it was just like a very tedious process. Anyway, it's fine, it's done. I'm happy with the way it came out, and it looks really awesome. And it's almost got like a borderline pirate feel to it, which is something that I didn't really want to go for. And I was trying to avoid like the pirate theme around this, because it's not a pirate area. It's more of like a pioneer type area. But I think in the end it's fine, and you really wouldn't even, I guess, notice it unless I said something about it. But what we're doing right now is actually going through with this other little part of a wall, and this is going to be another part of the water element of this building. And it's kind of interesting. I love how this all comes out, and I love how this looks in the end. And eventually this is going to be like the water trap that it looks like the water gets poured into this little basin down here, and then eventually pumped up to the water tower that then gets circulated down into the water wheel. So yes, there is all a major purpose like overall to these little areas down here, and it's just one of those things that I really like because it gives some sort of purpose to these spaces. Like we're trying to fill a lot of this space up, and a lot of times if you don't have like a little bit of a purpose to it, you could just be putting scenery in for the sake of putting scenery in, you know? You want to have some sort of flow or visual flow or optical like illusions going on that make some sort of sense to the guests, you know? It gives interest without adding like clutter, I think is a good way to put that. But you'll see in the pipe work now go up into the top of the water tower, and then down the side of the building and into this basin area that we just built. Now we have a little boiler up there, and that was supposed to be like the pump, if you will, to get the water up there. It's kind of weird because the art pieces don't really match it precisely. I don't know. I think it's fine. It's just one of those things that I could nitpick and really hate on a lot. And there's really no other good alternatives out there. But what we're doing right now is something that I absolutely love. This little part on this build is so cool. And this is the little water return or something, the intake of water into the building, I guess you could say. And this comes out so nicely, and it's just because we're building this like custom wooden chute. And I do want to mention that the wood that we're using right there is from the Haunted DLC pack, or is it just it may have just been a patch, but it's from the Halloween set of things, and is such a nice plank. Like, the planks that we've had so far in the game, like in the base game, they're great, but the wood plank that came with the Haunted pack, you can color it to make it more look like a wood, because originally it's like a dark, like a black color, but you can make it look a lot nicer, and it looks more like a clean-cut piece of lumber. And building things like this, it's such a nice thing to be able to do with. Now, sticking with the open feel of this whole building, we've done a lot with these little open, I don't even know what you want to call them, like the framed openings here, which go around, or instead of like a wall, you have that opening there with like the nice little support beams. And it looks great, but we had to block those off from the guests. So obviously we're using the same little rope and chain, if you will, feel to this. And this turns out to be pretty nice. Now, I'm not sure if like an actual theme park in real life would be able to use that sort of railing system, because I feel like it's probably some sort of safety hazard, especially when you're up like on the second story of the building over a ride. I feel like you'd need some sort of rigid support up there, but luckily this is a game and we can do whatever we want. So I really like how that ends up coming out. And honestly, this building took so long to build, but it comes out so nice in the end, and I just love how it comes out, and I can't wait to get in there in the live portion and go around and show you guys all of the little intricate little things, because honestly you can miss it a lot of times in the time lapse because we're going by so fast, and the time lapse on these episodes is more to give you a broad sense of how things were built, and then we jump in and check out all of the intricate little details of things. Now, we did a little bit of scenery work in the front of this area, and by a little bit, I mean, I think we got it done in this episode. Now, this wasn't exactly something that I was intending on doing in this episode, but as we built through it, I needed to do something to get, you'll see the terrain is actually down. We've sunken this whole building down, or this whole station down into the ground, so it's more or less ground level. And it creates this really bad, like, moat around it, like, where you can't get the terrain to come up because of all the path work and the station work. The terrain actually won't come in and clip through it. So I wanted to get the front at least done because it looks a lot better when we have all of the scenery done to connect it all up and make it look like it's all flat land. But before we jump into that, I did try to do something with these corrugated roofs. And I was looking up pictures of the old mining buildings, like I said, and the ones that you guys sent to me. And a lot of times they use like these corrugated sidings. Now, I originally went through and I did this in a vertical sense, but I really didn't like the way it looked kind of like a garage door. So in the end, all we're doing is putting this down as like a little stripping around the base of this building. And it looks so good. I love how this comes out because it just adds that little bit of like interest into this, and it's only around the vertical planked walls. So it adds such a nice contrast to like the vertical planks and then the horizontal corrugated metal, and it just looks so great. And eventually we'll actually go through and put some scenery work in there, like trees and stuff. So it's one of those like subtle touches that actually get hidden away a little bit, and you really only notice it if you really look for it. And I love adding that kind of detail into these builds, where yes, we could do something very ornate and just have it like out in the open and everyone's gonna notice it, but I feel like when you hide it away a little bit, it adds that little extra bit of like just specialty to it, you know? It's just like that little hidden gem kind of sense. But what we're doing is adding a little more trim onto these buildings right now, and this, just trying to frame all of this out was kind of a tedious process, but in the end it comes out so nice. I mean, I love how this little framing project worked, and it gets back to the basics of what this building is meant to be, and that is just a really basic building slapped together for a mining purpose or whatever. And working off of that like concept, the framing on the tops of these buildings isn't like ornate or ornamental in any sense of the words. It's just basically planks hammered in there with nails and put in like with brackets, and that's it. You know, it's just there just because it needs to be there to hold the building together. So I really love how all of this little like detail work, even though it's not like super intricate detail work, it is detail work nonetheless. And it adds so much to this. It just adds like that little element of, yes, somebody had to go up there and hand build that stuff. And in this game, it's very easy to like overlook that like aspect of a building when you just slap walls down and put roofs on it and you're like, all right, it's done. But you like in the real world, you'd have to go in and frame out the top where the roof meets the wall. And that's the kind of thing that you just have to do in this game by hand. And it's almost like you were up there nailing the boards in yourself. But obviously, you don't have to do that much of a physical effort to do this. But yeah, I mean, it's just adding little elements to this and then trying to get everything looking good. And eventually, it's so nice. And I don't know, it's just a nice little building. I'm sure you guys will let me know. I've said it so many times already. I love how this building comes out. But what we're doing right now is adding like the final little roofing section of this whole massive roofing project. It was very tedious. It was a very, very fluid construction project on my end, at least. I mean, I had an idea of it, and eventually it comes out as kind of how I imagined it, but as a more evolved state. But anyway, what we're doing right now is just doing a little bit of some scenery work around the front. Like I said, I cut a lot of that out because it was very tedious just putting up these little walls throughout here. And again, they could be construed as like a pirate type setting, but it's like that weird little border of pirate and pioneer that we're going for. And in the end, I feel like it's fine, and I guess you guys can let me know. It's not like I'm going to go back in and fix it. I think it is what it is at this point. And this could honestly be like a little transitional period, or a little transitional point in the park where we could go into like a pirate theme if we really wanted to. The nature work around the front of the building was something that I had to consider as we were doing it. I wanted to like make sure that people could see this building without covering it up from like a broad sense, but at the same time, like I was talking about earlier, I did want to kind of cover up some of like the ornate stuff, just because it's like one of those things where you get rewarded to come up to the building and be like, oh, look at those walls, they look so nice down here. But like from way back, you can just see there's this big building and there's some tree work around it. And it's not until you get up close that you notice all the cool little details. That's really what I was going for when we were doing the nature work around here. And just trying to get all these rocks set in was kind of a pain. And again, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna be doing with the actual like cliff side. Now, behind this set of bushes and stuff, like in between the drink stalls that we have and this new station for the Alpine River Rush, I'm thinking of maybe putting in like a bathroom, because I feel like we don't have an actual bathroom around in this like section of the park, and it is probably something that we need. So yes, eventually we'll be going through and putting a bathroom in this area, just because our guests have to go to the bathroom, and we do have that drink stall right there, so they just need to go to the bathroom that much more. So anyway, it'll probably go in probably within the next few episodes. We'll see what happens there. It's just another small project that we're gonna have. What we're doing is just kind of finishing up this back part. Now, this build is very, very sporadic in its timeline here, I guess, but it was just like, it was such a fluid build, like I've been saying, that I would jump from one thing and start doing this, and then I'd get an idea and go over and do something else, and then jump back here because I had to finish this part. And by that time, like, designs have changed in the building, and there's like a new thing that I've been building with that I wanted to like do, so I had to take stuff out and do all that. But eventually we get to a point where it's a done deal, and we're getting to that point soon here. But this is the planter area that I was talking about earlier, and I love what we do with these planks on these stone walls. Now, obviously we could have just put the stone walls down here and been fine with it, but I really loved having like the top with this little plank on it, just to add that little level of like a construction detail, if you will. And this looks so good from like far back, because we're incorporating the wood that we've been using throughout the building into this new stone part. And the stone actually got its start over in the modern building that we have across the way. But that's one of those design elements that has carried over to this. And it's one of those things that I was trying my hardest to blend all of these designs together. And I really hope that this building does a good job of that. And I'm sure you guys can let me know in the comments when we get into the live portion. And you'll be able to see everything all as like a general, in a general sense. But I can't stress it enough. This building comes out so nice. And it's not even like the most ornate building. It's like it's slapped together, but it's such an awesome little build. So you guys, we're gonna be going into the live portion here now. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the other side. All right, guys, we are live back in Cedar Flags, and many guests are thirsty apparently, but we'll deal with that later, because right now what we're doing is checking out what we've just been doing in the extremely long time lapse, and that is build this incredibly simple yet kind of complicated-ish building. And yes, first off, let's start over here. And I was talking a little bit about the bathrooms that I eventually want to put in, and those are going to be done right here. So yes, that's why I didn't really decorate anything around here. Now, we may end up doing something with the terrain over here, which is fine, but eventually we'll have like a nice little bathroom cubby or whatever you want to call it over there. Now, I love how this area is shaping up. Now, the path work is one of the main things that looks so good down here. And you saw the beginning of the time lapse, and then somewhere in the middle, I wanted to use like a sloped path, and I didn't want to use like the raised path. I wanted it to be on the ground. So with the terrain tools, we had to kind of go in and try to shape the terrain and make it kind of flat. Now, it looks like at parts it's not very good, but it's good enough that I said it's okay. But yeah, I wanted to use like basically like a nice sloped path, and over here was pretty easy to do. But over here, it's on like a curve and a slope, so it was kind of hard to do. But yes, eventually we're going to be going through here, and you'll notice that the path is actually dipped below the elevation of the original main path over here. And we're going to be able to do something kind of cool with like a retaining wall around here, and then eventually link it up to here, I think. Like, the original plan was to put like a plaza in here. Now, with my new plan of trying to somehow get like a ride incorporated into this area, it's going to be kind of interesting to try to get that to work, but we'll see what happens with all of that. We may even like sink this down into like a pit and have like a coaster or something go through it. I'm not really sure. And then have this plaza as like a bridge type thing or an elevated thing. I'm not really sure, like I said. But yes, we have a lot of path work going on in this building, and it was very, very tedious, but in the end it comes out pretty nice. Now, the main path, as you can see, sweeps down around here, and we're going to be doing decorations on the other side as well. This area of the park is going to look so good. I cannot stress it enough. But yes, the main path comes over to here, and then eventually it's going to come all the way through here. And then the entrance to the ride is going to be right here or something. We'll do something with that in the next episode. And then we have this other path over here that goes over this bridge. Now, this is a really cool little area, and I don't know how many guests are actually going to use it, but I guess as we expand the path out to there or whatever we're going to do over here, more and more guests will start using that path. But I anticipate a lot of guests using the elevated path from the exit on like this way. Now, I guess we should go in and just show you the flow of everything before we get into talking about other stuff. And you saw the queue and where it started, but I did want to point out, and I did point this out in the time lapse, that this is kind of like an open air build down here. And I am gonna absolutely love how this looks once we get like guests involved and like standing in line in here, and it's gonna look so good. Now, guests are gonna come all the way back here to jump on. They're gonna jump into the queue, wrap around here, and then go down through here. And we have our little water sprout here, and we're gonna have to do something with some sort of scenery in here just to cover up like this bad like grass area over here. I can't take the terrain tool to this anymore because we have a path directly behind this, And once like you place a path down, the terrain underneath that path and kind of like around that path becomes ineditable. Like you cannot edit it anymore. So that's why we had to actually go through and, you know, carve out the terrain throughout here first and get everything looking good before we built all that stuff. But it was like I said, it was almost just like a actual construction project. So we have small areas in here that have like weird clipping going on, but I don't really think I mind this in here because it's not like we're actually going to be in here a lot. And as soon as you stop moving around, it stops clipping around, so that's fine. The water basin we have down here looks like it's getting filled up, and then it looks like it's getting pumped up. Anyway, that's not what we're looking at right now. We're just looking at there's so much to talk about. We're looking at the way that people flow through this area. Now, they get over to here, and we're going to have to put something in here as well, just to make this look like a cool little decorated area. I'm not even sure. We might just do like a plank, like little platform or something. But guests can then go through here and into like this little main building, or main room, I guess. And it's so cool. It's really cool in here. We have the water coming down through here into the water wheel, and it looks like it's pumping or turning this little shaft that I put in here. I didn't really have anything else I could do with that. There are some pulleys that you can get, but unfortunately the pulleys and the water wheel spin at a different rate. So it looked really weird when I was trying to see if that was a good like little thing to do. Now guests will eventually end up getting off of the ride and then going through the exit and into this little exit room. Now this isn't really much of anything in here. There's not like a shop over here or anything, but it is a cool little area to just like, if I just got off this ride, I would totally walk over here and like look out. And it's so cool because you can see the guests or the passengers on the next raft going out, and then all of the nature work, and you can see across the way all of the people who are going to be walking down the slope path. And yeah, it's just a really cool little area. And then we have these bushes in here to kind of mask in between the building, just because there's nothing that we're going to put down in here that's going to be like functional or anything. So just covering it up with a little bit of nature seemed to be the best option there. Now guests are going to walk up this little flight of stairs into a flat area and then up this little ramp. Now this little pathing area took so long to try to get to work right, and eventually it did. And eventually we put this little hat stall in here, and this just gives people incentive to walk down this way. So when you're in the queue and you're looking up, you're gonna see people walking about up there. And I love how this, like when this building comes alive, it's gonna look so awesome. I cannot wait to actually open this ride. I don't think I've been this excited to open a ride yet in Cedar Flags, which is kind of sad because I love how Gravity Mod comes out and how the track layout is, and I love coasters way more than I love water rides. But this whole like experience and the whole station building on this ride is so nice. Guests can walk out and down and across the bridge like we originally planned for them to do, or they can go ahead and walk across the bridge that goes over the ride and then down through all of this scenic work throughout here. So yes, this is looking good. But we started talking about the water, and that is where it starts in here and then gets pumped up this little channel, which is on the outside of the ride, or the station rather. It gets pumped up here by this big, I'm saying pump, but it's like a boiler, and then into the water tank and then down through there. So I really love having all of this ductwork kind of go through everything, and it just looks like it's all connecting and doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it looks like we actually have water flowing throughout here. So that was the actual goal of that. Now, in the time lapse, I actually talked about this already, but I love this part of the building. And from back here, this could very, very easily have just been a very square building. But adding this little like line, the sight line of just like one angle going down, it looks so good. And then having the little walkway or the path on its angle there looks, it's so good. I keep saying it looks so good, but it does. It looks so good. Eventually, we're going to have to go ahead and put some signs up here, and that's why I left this wall blank. We may remove this little window thing that we have here, which is actually just like a TV screen at this point, but I didn't feel like putting like an art block in there for whatever reason. Eventually, that might become a sign for the ride as well. And then I think this one as well, because there need to be signs on the building somehow, like how we have Alpine Spirit sign and all that kind of stuff over here. Now, even though the screens in this game are square, I'm hoping we can do a round sign here, using some like decoration around the outside. So hopefully that ends up looking cool, because the rafts themselves are actually round. I think that's pretty much it for this, what we've just been doing. Man, I love the little corrugated, like little base to these walls. It looks so good. But in the next episode, we're gonna be going through and doing more of the like nature work around the ride. We might even come all the way up throughout like this area and get all of this done just to make it look like a complete and themed ride. Now, we're going to have to actually decorate the outside of the queue path that we have around here, which shouldn't be a big deal. We're just going to put some nature around here. And yeah, that's going to be that. So, we should be able to get a point of view after that episode, and I'm looking forward to that because this whole ride is just such a nice experience at this point. And I am so excited to see how this all comes out when we get riders and guests going through this. So, guys, I think that's it. So, yes, this is a long episode, I know, but if you liked it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you disliked it, thumbs down. Let me know if you guys want to see anything in the theming of it. Let me know what you think of the overall design of this building. And, of course, I'll have the save uploaded to the Steam Workshop, so you guys can go ahead and grab this and do whatever you want to do with it as well. So, guys, I will see you in the next episode of Cedar Flags.